Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to push forward through yet another offseason together. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today we are talking about positions that I think the Jaguars can make an argument that it is worth double dipping at. Three positions that I think the Jaguars can invest multiple picks at over the course of the 2026 NFL draft, and frankly, have it make complete sense. Now, we saw the Jaguars do this at a few different positions last year. Look at running back. They take Bayshaw Tuden with their first pick of day 3, and then I think LaQuinn Allen was their final pick. That obviously paid off. I mean, Travis Etienne was the Jaguars running back 1 for the majority, not even the majority, for really the season. But you still saw Tuten and Allen both make significant contributions toward the Jaguars. And, just by double dipping at that position last year, the Jaguars built the future of their running back room in many ways. Beyond that, you also saw it happen at safety. Jaguars take Caleb Ransaw, their first day 2 pick, and then take Rayon Lane later in the draft. Obviously, Ransaw doesn't play last year because of his training camp foot injury. But Lane, you saw him make a ton of plays on special teams. You even saw him, as the year go on, make more and more plays defensively. So I think that was obviously a sound strategy. Offensive line, they take Wyatt Milam on round 3. And then they take Jonah Monheim in the day's final round. So that was a scenario where, both Milam and Monheim have taken snaps at guard. They believe both can play center. Milam has even taken some at tackle. The Jaguars, despite signing a ton of offensive linemen, still invested several picks into that position. And then linebacker. The Jaguars have some very different linebacker spots because they do play with a Sam linebacker in the defense who is kind of a throwback, back to the 4-3 stack and kind of Sam linebackers with Dennis Gardeck. So they drafted his backup in Jalen McLeod, and then Foyelu comes back up in Jack Kaiser. So we've seen them do it. And we've seen them, like I said, have some success. It worked out at running back. It looks like they got some good depth at offensive line. And I'd say linebackers is the one spot where, we didn't see either one of those guys play a lot. But, safety, as long as Ransaw hits, that looks like it'll be quite the decision as well. So, ultimately, there are several positions the Jaguars could do this at again this season. I think one that makes a lot of sense right off the bat is tight end. The Jaguars have a true number 1 tight end, a guy who, there's no question about that or anything in regards to what he brings to the table in Brenton Strange. Strange is fantastic. He's gotten better each season he's been in the NFL. He would have had breakout level numbers last year if he didn't miss, a month and some change with injury. Him coming back, another year in the system, another year healthy, I think he has a chance to completely explode this year in terms of his stock. Behind him, though, the Jaguars are a little lacking. They really just have Quinton Morris right now and then Hunter Long. Quinton Morris, I think, functioned really well as a backup tight end last year. Definitely improved as the year went on. I think might even still have some untapped potential. But ideally, I think he's probably your tight end 3. Hunter Long, was a healthy scratch for a few games last year. Made a few plays for the Jaguars early in the season, but ultimately as a backup level tight end. The Jaguars have already adjusted this room some. They already released Johnny Munt, who was more or less their tight end 2 from last year. I think that they want to get more dynamic at the position. I think that they want their backups to Strange to offer more than what the Jaguars got from the backups last season. You saw 12 and 13 personnel really take over in the NFL last year. And some of the best offenses lean on it weekly. And heck, we saw the Jaguars get beat bad by it. Back-to-back games. You remember the Seattle Seahawks and Los Angeles Rams back-to-back weeks ran similar plays. Terrence Ferguson scored on one of them, and I don't believe A.J. Barner scored on the other, but it was a really big gain, and it was the same play. Some 13 personnel. The Jaguars thought, 13 personnel, we're going to come out heavy. Really nobody playing deep, and they got burned twice by it. I think the Jaguars would love to do something like that. Could they have done it last year? I don't think so, because you have Strange. Okay, if Strange was covered up, I don't think Munt or Long are really running by guys. So I could very easily see them investing in early pick, in the tight end room, say whether it's even 56, whether it's one of the top 100 picks, and then later on day 3, investing another pick at the position. Give you 4 tight ends, give you the depth and insurance you need if you're going to play with a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, and then that last guy can also play some special teams to get the best, bang for your buck. I think that's a scenario that makes a lot of sense for the Jaguars. Next, I think defensive tackle. Who is their future at defensive tackle right now? It is important to plan ahead at a number of positions. The Jaguars, have some guys identified as, I think, these guys are potential big pieces of our future at several spots. They don't have any at defensive tackle. Right now, the Jaguars are completely relying on Devon Hamilton and Eric Armstead again, just like they were last season. And that's not to say they can't be relied upon or even that they shouldn't, but how many times are the Jaguars going to go to that well before finally they get to the point where one year it's, we waited a year too long to find some answers at defensive tackle? And I get it. The demand for impact interior defensive players, especially pass rushers, is high, and the supply is low. Always has been, always will be. I completely understand that. But you can't, if you're the Jaguars, just stand around and wait for these guys to be made available. Whether through the draft, whether through free agency, whether through a trade, you can't just let the opportunity, work itself out on its own time. Because these guys oftentimes don't become available. The simple answer is the Jaguars need to find their own guys. They need to draft and develop their own defensive tackles. So I think it's a big enough need to merit multiple picks at the position. And I think the Jaguars, would be wise to go ahead and start the development for the future of the defensive tackle room now. Because they used a lot of stopgap solutions last year. Austin Johnson, stopgap solution. Colin Saunders wasn't any solution, but would have been a stopgap solution had he, worked out. Matt Dickerson, a happy surprise, but still a stopgap solution. They need to do more to make sure that this room can have some impact players moving forward. And then finally, defensive end. I think there's a good chance that Danny Strigow and B.J. Green into the years the Jaguars' top 2 backup defensive ends. I mean, they're really high on both of them. Both flashed a lot last year. Both do a lot in practice to, I think, really make an impression on the Jaguar staff, on the locker room. It wouldn't surprise me to see them say, okay, you guys are ready for this role. But if they do that, then they still have to find their new BJ Green and their new Danny Strigow. Their true backups at defensive end. You had DeJuan Smoot and Emmanuel Ogbah last year, and their contracts expire. Just because guys are getting promoted into their spot potentially doesn't mean you don't still have to add to the room. The Jaguars, since drafting Trayvon Walker, they haven't had any edge rushers to develop. Strigow and Green are the first young ones that they've really had develop at any rate, that they've given any attention to. Miles Cole played a handful of snaps. That wasn't development. So I think it's time for the Jaguars, and it's been time for them, use some draft ammo on that position. Find you some more young pass rushers. You can never have enough of them. And I think this is a chance for the Jaguars to, not just learn that lesson, but finally apply it because it's one that's needed applying for a few years now.